Welcome to the Couch Scouts Podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Welcome to the Couch Scouts Podcast. I am your host, Matt Cooper. With me is my co-host, Matt Rupert.
How you doing, my man?
I'm doing pretty good. We are without Matt Jackson again this week. He's feeling under the weather, so prayers up for him to make a quick recovery there. But on this episode of tonight's podcast, we are going to begin a little mini-series going through each position on your dynasty roster and discussing buys and sells. So tonight we're going to start with the quarterback position. And actually, we're going to be doing the running back position tonight as well, but on the bonus podcast. So if you're subscribed to the website, CouchScouts.com, you will have access to our running back buys and sells. And of course, if you're just listening on the free feed, then you'll get the quarterback position. And so, yeah, that's what we're doing tonight. If you didn't know, we do have a website and you can subscribe. We have an all 22 film room. We've got bonus podcasts that we post every week. We're going to have a rookie guide that we're going to be starting on very soon so that by the time we get to April with the draft, we will have an expansive 2025 rookie guide with probably 60, 70, somewhere in that ballpark prospects, basically anybody you would even consider taking in a dynasty draft. We're going to break down the film, put their strengths, weaknesses, rank them, film score, where we would draft them at, so that you can have that as kind of the ultimate cheat sheet for all of your rookie drafts. So that's part of the package. You can also, this is an underrated one, I feel like. You can set up a team consultation. So you can set up a 30-minute Zoom call with one of us where we will get in detail on one of your dynasty teams with kind of just talking strategy. What trades would we look to make if we were you? We have, I think, over 20 subscribers on our site. Only one has taken advantage of this so far, and I think this is the best time of year for it, honestly. Like, people are in the trading mood. It's the time to figure out if you're a rebuilder or a contender and make some moves accordingly. So, if you're listening to this and you're a member and you haven't signed up for your 30-minute team consultation, go ahead and do it. You're already paying for it, so jump in there. We'd love to help you out. So anyway, CouchScouts.com. Would love for you to consider subscribing, and thank you to those that have already joined. So let's get into the episode tonight, Rupert. Quarterback buys and sells. And we'll start with the buys, and I'll let you lead us off. Who's your first quarterback buy to talk about this week?
I've talked about it before this season, but I'm going with Sam Darnold again. I feel like he's going to earn himself a job somewhere else, if he's not re-signed with the Vikings this offseason. He just looks like a different player to me. I know he has a great scheme around him. He has great players to throw to, but he's just dropping dimes. His confidence looks like it's there. To me, he just looks like a completely different player. And I feel like he's going to earn a spot somewhere next year. If he goes to a spot where it's not as good at supporting weapons or not, a system that doesn't fit him as well, he may not have to produce like he has so far this year, but, he's producing incredibly well. And the teammates seem to really love him and rally around him there in Minnesota.
Yeah, this weekend he had some moments where he looked like the old Sam Darnold, 2 pretty bad interceptions, but he did still throw for 290 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's putting up numbers pretty consistently. I think he's somebody that if you're a contending team, you can plug him in as a QB2 and feel pretty good about it, at least this season. I'm with you, though. If he goes somewhere else in the offseason, you've probably missed your sell window. And so I would only buy him if he's a contender. I don't really see him thriving away from Kevin O'Connell, but good solid contender buy. Are you saying you would buy him even if you were rebuilding?
It wouldn't be like my first target. I'd try to go with one of the rookies that's been balling out if I was, trying to rebuild. But yeah, it would be much more of a contender buy.
Okay. What would you be willing to pay for Sam Darnold?
It's a great question.
Would
I
you
don't know
be
if it would
willing
get it
to
done,
pay?
but
Go ahead.
I'd send a second for him for sure, but I don't know if that'd get it done or not.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of the value adjacent players here, according to Keep Trade Cut, one is Jamison Williams. I think if I needed a quarterback on a contender, I'd feel comfortable with that. Another is Chase Brown. I'll let you answer that one. I actually have some thoughts on Chase Brown. He'll come up on our bonus show, so I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, I'd probably send him for him in a contender as long as I had running back depth.
Okay. Michael Penix Jr.
I probably would, since we're probably not going to see Penix for quite a while.
I think I would keep Penix there. Personally, I know in a contender, it's like I need a quarterback. This is my window, so I'd have to at least consider it. But in a vacuum, I definitely want Penix. I think he's going to be a good player. Jake Ferguson in a tight end premium league.
No, I keep Jake Ferguson.
Yeah. Mike Evans. I feel like if I'm a contender, I probably need Mike Evans, so I don't think I would want to trade him. But
yeah, agreed.
Anyway, so just to give some legs to it, so we're not just throwing out buy, sell, and not giving you any actionable. What would we actually do it for? So I'll go over to my first quarterback buy of the night, and that is Trevor Lawrence. And I don't know if the rankings have just not caught up yet with reality, because he did have a really rough start, and so maybe the perception in people's minds is like bad taste in their mouth. But he is ranked currently in Dynasty as the QB 17, 60th overall. Some guys that are going in a similar range to him as far as quarterbacks. So he has said he's QB 17. QB 16 is Bo Nix. QB 18 is JJ McCarthy, who hasn't seen the field yet. QB 19 is Dak Prescott. QB 20 is Tua Tagovailoa. If you go up to QB 15, it's Jared Goff. And I don't know if people have noticed, Trevor Lawrence has been stringing together some pretty good weeks, and he's QB 11 on the season now. He's a QB 1. Still pretty young. We know the talent's there. You know, even when you watch during the losing streak, I felt like the offense wasn't clicking. Things were out of sort, but I didn't feel like he looked bad to me. So I think people have kind of soured on Trevor Lawrence, and it's opened up a buy window here. And I would definitely look into acquiring Trevor Lawrence because he's still a young player with a lot of job security that can put up QB1 numbers in your QB2 spot. And I don't think he's going to break the bank. So according to this, you could send Jalen Waddle for him straight up. Easily Trevor Lawrence. T. Higgins for him straight up. Easily Trevor Lawrence. Jackson Smith and Jigba. That's a little closer, but still in a super flex league, easily Trevor Lawrence. It's saying that you could send a mid 2025 first. In a bad quarterback class, I'm easily taking Trevor Lawrence over the mid 2025 first. George Kittle is in there. I know it's tight end premium, and he's like crushing it, and that might be hard to do as a contender if you don't have another good tight end option. But like value wise, I would smash Trevor Lawrence over George Kittle if I had that trade offer in my inbox straight up. So it seems to me right now, like with looking at Bo Nix ahead of him, I'm like, what are we doing here, people?
That's
like
insane to me.
if I can send Bo Nix for Trevor Lawrence, I'm doing that all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. So when I started looking through these to research for the show, I was like, wow, Trevor Lawrence is a screaming buy if these are the prices.
Agreed. We talked about him a month or so ago, that we're a little concerned after that kind of down streak. But like you said, he hasn't looked that bad. It seems like he's been the most unlucky quarterback the past 2 years, really, with all the drops in the end zone from, he's throwing a dime and Calvin really drops it. And he's had that quite a bit this season as well. There's been a lot of compilations from just like 1 or 2 games of all the drops that the wide receivers are having. So he hasn't been getting as much help. But it seems like that Brian Thomas Jr. connection is really going strong now.
Yeah.
And the offense is seeming to start to hum.
For sure. So who is your second quarterback by?
I'm going with Caleb Williams here. And just from personal conversations, like seems like some people are panicking on him. I saw someone tweet today that Bryce Young's numbers the last 2 weeks have been better than Caleb Williams. And it seems like some people are, not looking as fondly on him with Jane Daniels shining and Bo Nix, being serviceable at least.
Bo Nix is QB8 on the season, by the way.
Yeah.
That's why he's priced above Trevor Lawrence. It's like watch the games.
I don't buy it at all.
I don't either. But I'm just like,
gold.
In case you didn't know, he's QB8 on the season. That's why. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of people like panicking on him, like they tanked to get him, and now they're like, "Oh man, do I need to flip him? Like, do I need to add a player plus Caleb Williams to try and get someone like a Jaden Daniels or, whatever it may be?" Like, people are already starting to panic on him, and I'm not. Like, yeah, he hasn't looked that great the last couple of weeks, but to me, that offensive coordinator hire just made zero sense to me. Why on earth they would hire him? And it hasn't looked good. I don't think that coach is going to be around next year. And there's been a lot of talk about maybe a Ben Johnson going to the Bears. If something like that happens, then Caleb Williams to the moon. Get him a competent offensive coordinator and scheming some good plays, kind of win back the locker room. I think he's going to be as good as we thought he was.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I'm not panicked on him at all. I guess my question is like, I don't know if the market has just not panicked as much as you're thinking that they have, but at least per Keep Trade Cut, when I'm looking at this, he's still QB9. So the quarterbacks above him, let me see, would you want him over Joe Burrow?
No, I'd still probably take Burrow.
Yeah, me too. Jordan Love.
I'd still take Love.
Yep. Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, Mahomes.
Yeah, and then it's Caleb Williams. And he's above, the guys directly below him is Kyler Murray, which I think I would rather have Caleb for sure. Justin Herbert. I feel like I would rather have Herbert personally.
Yeah, I was just thinking I would definitely, because he's been looking absolutely phenomenal. Even though, they're not airing out the ball, he just looks like he's playing on a different level this year.
QB12 is Drake May, which I feel like Drake May has shown more with less so far this year. And I think that's a natural transition here, because my next quarterback to buy is Drake May. And so I think we can kind of talk about these two guys together, because I feel like, he's listed here at QB12 in these Keep Trade Cut rankings. And he is, I think the Konami code is not being talked about enough. Like, he is rushing like at a really high rate, and he's really producing from a fantasy perspective. Like, that gives him a floor and ceiling. I think he looks really good in spite of that offense being a total dumpster fire and there's no decent weapons. And he's producing already. And I wasn't really expecting that. And so I think it's only wheels up from here. I think he's got a ceiling of being like a high-end difference-making quarterback on your roster. He seems to have a floor, and he just looks like he belongs. It's not like, oh, he's putting up fantasy stats, but if you watch the games, he stinks. Like, no, he looks really good. So for me, Drake May right now, like, he's not going to be cheap, but I don't think people have fully adjusted to viewing him as like a cornerstone dynasty player. And I think he should be viewed that way at this point. I think he's shown us enough through these first few starts to be viewed like in a super flex league at his age with his talent as a cornerstone player. And when I look at the value adjacent players, like, first of all, I mentioned Kyler Murray. I would easily rather have Drake May than Kyler Murray on my dynasty roster right now. I think it's really close between May and Herbert. I'm not going to fight you either way on that one. Another player ranked above Drake May right now, Kenneth Walker. I would easily rather have Drake May than Kenneth Walker. Sam Laporta is right below him. I would easily rather have Drake May than Sam Laporta. Next guy on the list is Brock Purdy. Like, he's just barely below Drake May. If I could send Brock Purdy with a little plus on top and go get Drake May, I would do that for sure. Right below Brock Purdy is Jonathan Taylor. So, when I look at all these players going around him, I'm like, I want Drake May in almost all of these scenarios. And we actually saw a real trade go down in our Discord the other day where the guy's saying, hey, I'm a contender. I need to add a quarterback. I've got some injuries. And, what would I have to pay for these players? And I was sitting here thinking, like, one of the players he mentioned was Drake May. He said, what would you pay for Drake May? And I was like, well, you're going to have to give up the farm for this dude. Like, he's a rookie. He's balling out. It's quarterback and a super flex. He's young. He ended up getting it done for Dak Prescott and a late 2025 first. I was like, is that really, like, is this just a weird league where his league mate made a silly decision? Or is that like, can people actually get that deal done? Because I was like, I would so much rather have Drake May than Dak Prescott in a late 25 first at this point. So, yeah, I feel like people have not fully come around to Drake May as a centerpiece for dynasty rosters, and he's a guy I would be looking to buy.
I agree with that. He's looked like best case scenario, and like you said, despite his supporting cast, they're not playing my man crush Javon Baker, so he doesn't have a true weapon out there on the outside. He seems to have a good connection with Pop Douglas, who's more of a slot receiver, kind of a Josh Downs type of player. But they don't really have a true win on the outside kind of receiver at this moment. So if they can get one in the draft next year, and they really need to improve that offensive line. It's just been atrocious. What, top 8, top 6 kind of quarterback next year, potentially.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it crazy too that they could have had Ladd McConkey?
Right.
But they took Jalen Polk instead. I mean,
insane.
I do not understand that Jalen Polk draft pick whatsoever, and they're definitely paying for it now. But yeah, one more I'll throw out there. We've each mentioned 2, but I'll throw out an honorable mention, and that is the dynamic duo of Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield. I feel like they're just always buys because they're these guys that, like, it's not the sexy name. They're not that young. They don't have rushing upside. That both of them went through phases in their career where everybody thought they were dead in the water, like Goff towards the end of his time with the Rams and Baker bouncing around between teams. And it's like the perception of them nobody's ever in their mind been able to switch back to like, oh, these guys are high-end quarterbacks now. Yeah. And so they're not going to be like cheap, but they're going to be a solid QB1 that you can plug into your QB2 spot, and that's a championship winning move. Because if you look at both of these guys, they're ranked as like quarterback 14 and quarterback 15 in Dynasty. And so you can go buy them for cheaper than you would a big name like a Drake May or a Justin Herbert, and they're going to give you just as much, if not more, production. So I always like shouting those guys out, particularly for contending rosters. But they're also like, I don't think they're 1-year rentals or something. Like both of them are locked into long-term contracts and they look good and the teams are committed to them. So I just don't know why people in their minds can never like value guys like that appropriately. But I feel like they're kind of evergreen buys.
I couldn't agree more. And we talk about it a lot, like trying to play in a 3 to 4 year window. And both those guys to me have so much job security for next 3 to 4 years. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're not really losing out in that window at all.
Yep. All right. So in a second, we're going to switch over to some quarterbacks to sell. And before we do that, I did want to mention our Discord. So we shouted it out a minute ago when we were talking about Drake May and a trade that went down involving him in our Discord. So our Discord, it's completely free. We made it to get to know the people that listen to our show. So if you are listening to this right now, we made that Discord for you. And it's a ton of fun. There's over 100 guys in there. It's super active, chatting on game day, reacting to breaking news, posting trades to get everybody's thoughts on, I got this offer. What do you guys think about it? What kind of counter offer should I send? And it's just a really fun community. So if you're listening on Twitter, hit the link in our bio. If you're listening anywhere else, check the show notes, and the Discord invitation should be on there. And we would love to have you come join us, join the community. So with that being said, let's get into our quarterbacks to sell. And we'll start with you, Rupert. Who is your first quarterback to sell?
I feel like this may be too much of a layup, but I just had to do it. Derek Carr, after losing to the Panthers, getting his head coach fired for the second time. He's still, producing from, a passing yards kind of standpoint, but to me, it's like watching the eye test. Like it to me, he's not going to have a starting job much longer in the NFL. I feel like he's kind of going to go that Carson Wentz route and be a perennial backup from here on out. So while he's still a starting quarterback, I would get out from under him as soon as possible. I just don't see him starting for the Saints next year. I don't see him starting for another team next year.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the value adjacent players, and it is pretty garbage. I think people know that Derek Carr is not good, so you're not going to get much for him. I'm just going to fly through these. I would just keep Carr over Michael Wilson, Isaac Garendo, Kimani Vidal. I'll keep Derek Carr and ride whatever production he might give me, particularly if I'm a contender. The only one on this list is other quarterbacks that I'm interested in. It just says you could get him for a 2025 early third. So if I could squeeze that up into a late second, or even give Derek Carr and a third to get a second, that's a move that I would look to do. There's some other quarterbacks that are interesting. So Jameis Winston, I feel like I would trade Carr for Winston because, like you said, I view them both as 1 year guys anyway. And I think Winston is going to give me better production this year than Carr. So that's a move that I would make. A couple spots down is Aaron Rodgers. Again, even though Carr's younger, I don't view him as being a long-term value kind of guy. So I'll just take Aaron Rodgers so I feel better plugging into my lineup. So those are some moves that I might consider making. I don't think you're going to get much, but
yeah,
those are some that you could try at least, and maybe you can get them off your roster because I don't think anybody really wants to buy Derek Carr right now.
I was just thinking, if you're not contending or kind of middle of the pack and you have him on your roster, someone that maybe had like Dak Prescott and just lost him to IR.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You trying to squeeze like a late second out of him, I think would be a win for you.
If the best you could get was a third, would you take it?
If it was the early third, probably not at the moment. Maybe during the draft. Like if someone I really liked kind of fell to the third round, at this moment, I probably just would ride him at that point.
Yeah, I don't think I would take a third either. Just for a starting quarterback in super flex, I don't think I could do it.
Yeah. Even if it is just the rest of the year, it's
yeah. So my first quarterback to sell, and we've kind of referenced him a couple of times in this podcast, but Kyler Murray. I don't understand why he is as high as he is. I guess he started out the season kind of hot, and he had that one really good game where he was like perfect passer rating and was scrambling around and making all kinds of crazy throws. It was the same game that Marvin Harrison had like 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. But outside of that, like his production has been really subpar, I would say, this season. Like I have him on a couple rosters, and where I've started him on contending teams, I've not been happy with what I've been getting out of Kyler Murray. And I don't know how seriously he takes. I mean, this has been the concern for years. It's like, I know it's easy to joke like, oh, the new COD came out, his play's about to fall off.
I mean,
but
correlation
like,
there.
There's some truth. I think like we wouldn't keep making the joke if there was no truth to it. I just don't know how committed he is to being a truly great player. And even this week, like he had the one play wide open to Trey McBride in the end zone, and he just airmailed it way over his head. And I feel like his rushing kind of props up his fantasy outlook a little bit. But from an NFL perspective, like if I was the Cardinals, I would be looking for an exit. I would be looking for an exit ramp to my relationship with Kyler Murray, and so yeah, I would sell him, given what we've talked about, that he's ranked ahead of guys like Drake May and Justin Herbert, and I mean you could get Devin Achane for Kyler Murray, and obviously it's always hard to trade a quarterback in a super flex league and not get one back, but like, oh man, Achane, he's so good. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of guys going around or even below Kyler Murray that I would just rather have over him. Even like Brock Purdy. Just give me Brock Purdy at this point. I feel like his job is way safer. He's a better real life quarterback. The production's going to be pretty steady week to week. Maybe not the ceiling that Kyler has, but I trust Brock Purdy a lot more.
I agree.
So Kyler Murray is my quarterback sell.
I agree. Brock Purdy's a really good call. He obviously doesn't have the rushing upside, but I feel like he does have more upside in the fact that like I can see him throwing for 4 and 5 touchdowns like in a game.
Yeah.
So yeah, much safer for
he's like the younger version of that like Jared Goff, Baker
100%.
Mayfield, evergreen
100%.
buys. Like he's just the unsexy name that is always probably going to be a little cheaper than he should be for what he gives you on your fantasy team. So he's a little more expensive than those guys because he's younger, but very much the same brand of player.
Exactly.
All right. So who was your second quarterback sell? I see that you were doing some dumpster diving here with your quarterback sells.
I feel like you went a little more bold with yours and kind of left me with the dumpster diving here. But another one that I don't. I mean, maybe he starts again next year, but I think there's a pretty good chance he's not starting next year, and that's Daniel Jones. To me, he has looked better this year in the games that I've watched compared to last year. He still has like a decent amount of rushing upside, but to me, I just think his coach is chomping at the bit to kind of get a real quarterback in his room that he can really mold and one that he chooses. I think people, again, it's because he's younger in car. I feel like you can get more, but like if you can get like more of early.
I was actually just getting ready to say. that they're right next to each other on keep trade cut. So you could copy and paste the same conversation that we just had about Carr with the surrounding pieces being, the Kamani Vidals and Michael Wilsons, and we're like, you're not getting much for Daniel Jones. Jones is QB 30, Derek Carr's QB 31. Some of the players you're seeing around him are like Rico Dowdle. So that's, I guess, Rico Dowdle is maybe a little bit more usable than like a Michael Wilson or something, but it's not great. So I would make the same, can I send Daniel Jones in a third and get a second? That's the kind of move that I would try to make just to get out from under him. So yeah, I agree. There's not a lot of reason to hold Daniel Jones, but just be realistic that he's probably not, like, you might want to just even think about including him in a package, because I don't think anybody's just gonna want to go buy Daniel Jones on his own. He's gonna be a tough one to sell. But,
agreed.
For my second one, and I wrote down 3 names here, but I think it's just too easy to pick on Bo Nix, and we've already talked about him, so I'm gonna skip that one, and I'm gonna go a little bit more spicy for my last QB sell, and that is CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud,
Oh,
who I love, by the way, was our QB1 in the class and is an amazing NFL quarterback, phenomenal player. Is going to be a really good piece on your dynasty team for a long time. So this is not me saying that I don't like CJ Stroud, but for the price, okay, because he is listed at QB4 and 10th overall. So he's a first round startup pick. And he just offers no rushing upside whatsoever. Like his ceiling is really capped. I think he is kind of like low key the same brand as like the Brock Purdy and the Baker Mayfield. He just has better marketing, I guess. Uh,
I
like just in terms of
I'd
play
put him
style, like
more
he's
in
a
the Joe
passer.
Burrow kind of category.
Okay, I mean that's
Yeah.
fair. Like I'm not trying to disrespect CJ Stroud. I think Joe Burrow produces at a much higher level for fantasy though, from what we've seen so far, and particularly the last couple of weeks with Nico and Diggs being out, like he put up 10 fantasy points for me this week. I have CJ Stroud in a lot of places and really all season. I mean, he's QB 17 on the year. So it's just not been like he's putting up mid range QB2 numbers and he's the QB4 in Dynasty. It's just not good enough for what you're having to pay for him. And so he's like within one spot of Josh Allen on these rankings. He's ahead of Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow. Like, I think I would rather have Hurts and Burrow at this point. I know that Stroud is younger, but like those guys are still super young. You got a lot of good years coming. Maybe not Hurts. I don't know. I mean, Hurts is young, but there's questions about how is he the long term whatever. But Joe Burrow for sure. I feel like I don't know. There's so much that you could get for trading CJ Stroud. I think that's the appeal. Is like, can I even like tier down to like a Jordan Love or a Drake May and get like a really big plus on top? I would love to make a move like that if I had CJ Stroud. So it's not the player that I actually love CJ Stroud. It's just the price. I think the perception of him as this young superstar player, which he is higher than the actual fantasy production that you're getting from
Agreed.
him.
That would be a smash deal if you could tier down to a Drake May or a Herbert and have maybe a little bit higher floor and still pretty similar upside.
Yeah, and get a first added or like a good young player, like can I get like I don't know, would you if it was like Herbert and Josh Downs for CJ Stroud, would you take that deal?
I probably want a little bit more than Downs.
Yeah.
Trying to think of.
I was just throwing out a name of like a young player that we like, but it's not like you're getting a superstar back because I don't know realistically that you could get like this young cornerstone piece added on with a Drake May, but I think you could realistically get like a Josh Downs or maybe even like, could I get Drake May, Josh Downs in a second or something? Yeah. So yeah, I think those are the types of deals that I would at least want to explore. And if you're a contender, I actually think like if you could like quote unquote down tier to Joe Burrow, I would even do that deal straight up and just Joe Burrow's getting me better production week in and week out. Yeah. So, I put CJ Stroud and it felt treasonous to do it because we love CJ Stroud on this show. But, so that does it for our quarterback buys and sells show. If you enjoyed this concept and you want to hear what we think about the running back position, subscribe to the website. That's going to be posted up later tonight because we're about to log off and go do that show right now. So we appreciate you guys watching. You can find Mr. Rupert at Matthew Rupert FF on Twitter /X. You can find me at CouchScouts FF. And you can find us at CouchScouts.com. You can find us in our Discord, which I mentioned earlier. And you can also, leave a like, comment, subscribe, 5-star review if you're on Spotify or Apple. All of those things help other people find our podcast, help us with the algorithm and all that. So we really appreciate you guys just taking a quick few seconds to do that for us. And it really does make a difference. So thank you for listening.